Hey guys, so today we are going to discuss about the question called as subsets. So this is a Leetcode medium question. This is actually a very famous question. Like it has been asked in many interviews as well by many companies. So let's start reading the question. So given an integer array nums of unique elements and return all possible subsets, the solution set must not contain duplicate subsets. Return the solution in any order. So first things first, what is a subset? Let's try to know that. So what actually a subset mean and how can we return all the subsets in a given collection of elements? So first things first, let's try to know what is a subset. So assume we have a set or some collection of elements which is represented by A, and assume we have another collection of elements which is represented by B, right? So now A will be having few elements. So elements in the sense, let's assume it has like some integers, and in similarly B has few elements in the sense even B has few integers in it. Let's assume that. So now what I can say is B is a subset of A only if all the elements in B are there inside A. Did you get the point? So like what I'm trying to say is, assume this is the set A which we have drawn before, right? So I can say B is a subset of A if all the elements of B are there inside A. So this is A, the bigger one. This is B, the smaller one. So the same point, if all the elements of B are there inside this A, right? So then I can say B is a subset of A. This is what a subset actually means. So now let's try with some numerical examples. So assume we have, let's take the same sets A and B. Let's assume A has collection of elements. Let's say A has 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 5. Let's take B. So B also have few elements in it. So let's take B has 2, 4 and 5. So now after getting these two lists, I can clearly say B is a subset of A because every element in B, all the elements in B are there inside A. See, so first is 2, right? 2 is there in A. Second is 4, 4 is there in A. Next is 5, 5 is there in A. So all elements of B are there inside A. So I can say B is subset of A. So this is what a subset actually means. So now let's try to take an example and let's figure out how can we find all the subsets from a given number of elements. So let's take another example. So let's assume we are having an example called as nums and contains elements like 1, 2 and 3. Let's say it has only 3 elements in it. So first things first, let's assume we have a list with empty elements in it. It has an empty set. It is an empty set. So if the given list is empty set, how many subsets do we have? So it's just an empty set, right? So if the given list is an empty list, then it has only empty set. For example, let's take we have a list which contains just element called as 1. So now how many subsets do we have? One would be an empty subset, another would be a subset which contains 1. So now let's take a set or a list which contains 2 elements in it. So now how many subsets do we have? So one would be an empty set, one would be a single one, so one would be a single 2, one would be 1 comma 2. So these are the subsets for the elements 1 and 2. Let's assume we have added one more element in it. So let's take 1 comma 2 comma 3. So let's find the number of subsets for this 1 comma 2 comma 3. So one would be an empty set, one would be a list or a set which contains 1, another would be a set which contains 2, so another would be a set which contains 1 comma 2. So now another would be a set which contains 3, another would be a set which contains 1 comma 3, another would be a set which contains 2 comma 3, and another would be a set which contains 1 comma 2 comma 3. So these are the subsets for the list of elements 1 and 2 and 3. So now like this is how we find a normal subset, right? So we are doing this just by using our brains. Like how are we technically solving this? How are we technically getting these subsets? So So when we added 3, we have got this list, right? So before adding 3, we have got this list. So let's try to find the difference, right? Let's try to find what actually made the difference between these two lists. So previously we had an empty set, even here we had an empty set. So here, and we had a set which contains 1, here we had a set which contains 1. Similarly, this is the same thing, and this is the same thing. So the extra things which we got is this, right? So the extra things which we got is this. So let's try to analyze these sets. So the extra things which we got is 3, which contains just 3. Another one is 1 comma 3. Another one is 2 comma 3. Another one is 1 comma 2 comma 3, right? So why did we get these sets? Only because of the reason we have added 3, right? Only when we have added 3 here, then only we have got these extra subsets. So now let's try to remove these 3 in these subsets. So when you remove the subsets, remove the 3 in these subsets, you will be getting one empty subset, because you have removed the 3 here. So when you remove this 3 in this subset, you will be getting 1 which contains 1, a subset which contains 1. If you remove this 3, you will be getting a subset which contains just 2. When you remove this 3 in this, you will be getting a subset which contains 1 comma 2. So if you clearly see, this set when you remove 3 is nothing but the set which you have got with 2 elements, right? So what is happening is, when you're trying to add a new element in here, you are just copying this entire previous subsets at the beginning, and you're adding 3 at the end of each and every subset of the previous list. So that's how you are getting the next subsets for each and every element. So even in this case, for example, let's say you have got this 1, right, with the subsets for 1. So when you have added 2, you're just copying the subsets here at the beginning, and later you're adding 2 in each and every place at the end. So you have added 2 here, and you got this subset which contains 2. You have added 2 here, you have got a subset which contains 1 and 2. So this is how you find technically the subsets for element, given number of given list of elements. So let's try to solve with an example. Let's try to solve how can we solve this recursively. So let's take the previous example only. Let's take the list which contains which is named after, called as nums, and let's say it has elements like 1, 2 and 3 in it, right? Let's say it has elements called as 1, 2 and 3. So now, as you're trying to do this recursively, let's assume that the recursive method name is called as find sets. Let's assume the name is find sets, and the main important thing is it needs parameters. So let's add a parameter which is an index, and I'll tell you how this helps. So first things first, what we'll be doing is we'll be calling this method. So I'll be calling this find sets method by passing 0, which is an index. Don't forget that. So this is an index. So from this call, I'll be calling another call to the next index, which is find sets of 1 index. From this 1 index, I'll be calling another call called as find set of 2 index. From this call, I'll be calling another call find set of 3 index. So now here we don't have 3 in third index, right? Because we have 0 index, we have 1, we have 2. But coming to 3, there is no element at third index, right? So that actually means we have come to the end of the array. So when you have reached the length of the array, what you have to do is, that actually means you don't have any elements. That actually means for no elements, the number of subsets would be just one empty subset, right? So the subset would be one empty subset. So what you can do is you can just return this subset as a result for this function, for this method call. So now the subsets which you have got is one empty subset, right? So now what you can do is, as we have done before, first things first, we create a result list and copy all the lists that you have got from the find set 3. So you copying all the subset. So for this case the only subset is the empty set. So now add the element which is at second index at the end of these subsets, so at the second index you have 3, right? So just add 3 at the end of these subsets, the sets which you have got from the next call, I mean from the previous call. So now if you add 3, it would just be 3, right? We just copied all the sets from here and you have copied to the result list, and you have just added the current element to the end of the sets. So now for now the subsets which contains 3 is one empty set and one 3. So now return this result set as a result for this method call. So now the result the response would be one empty set, a set which contains just 3. So now as you have done before, first things first, create a result list and copy all the subsets to this list. So one subset would be empty subset, one would be just 3. So now you have to add all the element which is present at first index to the end of these subsets. So the first index the element is 2, right? So just add 2 at the end of these subsets. So if you add 2 in this, it would be 2. If you add 2 in this, it would be 3, 2. So that actually means the elements, the subsets for 2 and 3 would be this result. So now you have to return this result list as a response for this call. So now the response would be one empty set, 1 3, 1 2, 1 3 comma 2. So now as you have done before, create a result list and add and copy all the subsets which you have got as a response. One would be empty one would be 3, one would be 2, one would be 3 2. So now what we have done before, we just added the current element at the end of the subsets. So the current element at 0th index is 1, right? So add 1 at the end of these subsets. So one would be just 1, one would be 1 comma 3, one would be, or you can also you cannot, like, it's not like just adding at the end, you can also add at any place. So it would be 1, it would be 1 comma 3, it would be 1 comma 2, it would be 1 comma 2 comma 3. So these are the subsets, the number of elements is 1 and 2 and 3. So this would be our result at the end, right? I hope you got this. So this is how you find the subset for the given collection of elements. So let's try to code this. So I'm having a method called as subsets. So the parameter would be a list of elements, so it would be named after nums. So we have to return all the subsets which can be formed by these nums. So first things first, what I'll be doing is I'll be creating a variable called as n, and this will represent the number of elements in the list. So now, as I said before, I'll be using a method. So this method would return a list of subsets, right? So I'll be creating a method which returns a list of subsets, and that would be find sets. So as I have used before, the parameter would be the index, and as I also have to use the number index, so I'll be using the number index as well. So first things first, what I have done is I have called this same call to the next index, right? So I'll be doing find sets of index plus 1, and also have to pass the nums. So I'll be calling the same call until the current index is greater than or equal to the nums length, right? So for that I have to verify that at the beginning. So if the index is greater than or equal to nums dot length, so you have seen before, if the index is greater than or equal to nums dot length, that actually means there are no elements. So if there are no elements, the number of subsets would be just one empty set. So for that I'll be using a list which would be the result. As I have said before, I have to send this result to the previous call so that they can use that. So this would be an array list, and in this I'll be adding an empty set, result dot add new array list, and I'll be reselling this result as a response. So now I'll be taking that response in here. So this would be the response from the call, and I would name it as, let's say, subsets. So what I'm trying to do is, when you got the subsets, first things first, I have to add all the subset to our result, right? So for that, I'll be doing just result dot add all of subsets. So what we'll be doing is, it will add all the subsets into this result array. So now we have to append the current element to all the subsets, right? So that we'll be doing it now. So we'll be traversing for each and every subset from these subsets, and I'll be just appending the current element to the set. So I'll be taking an extra temporary array list. So for just copying these set elements, so temp dot add all from this set, and I have to append the current element as well. So temp dot add nums of current index. So when I have done adding the current element, I have to add this set to the result, right? So result dot add temp. So when I have done appending the current element to all the sets, I just have to return the result. So by the end, as you have done recursively before, so this method will return the subsets of given nums. So I can just return find sets of 0, nums. So as we're starting from 0th index, right? So we have to pass 0 at the beginning. So this is pretty much the solution. Let's try to run this. Let's hope we don't have any errors and we don't have any mistakes. Yeah, it got accepted. Let's try to use some extra test case as well. Yeah, it got accepted. Let's try to submit this. Yeah, cool, it got succeeded. So this is how you find the subsets for given collection of elements. So as I said before, this is a really famous question. You must have to try this. So there are many similar questions as well, like subsets 2 or word subsets, like that. So you can even try that. So if you solve this, you can try solving those questions as well. So if you like the video, please make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you.